September is the month when, after holidays and leisure, everyone again comes back home and settles down to the regular rhythm of life. From a life of setting ourselves in loose, we once again tighten ourselves to the realities of life. The demands of our work or at school warms up, and we start feeling the pressure. This is the time we stir up the flames which seem to dim down a bit. Hence, it is a good time, I think, to reevaluate and rekindle the flame of our faith life too. Therefore, the topic that we would be meditating this coming 4 weeks would be Stir into Flame the Gift of God. A call St. Paul makes to Timothy in his second letter, chapter 1, verse 6. A call we as Christians need to respond to, because as St. Paul will continue in the next verse, for God did not give us a spirit of cowardice, but rather of power and love and self-control. The kind of cowardice which St. Paul refers to is seen expressed by the people of Israel and Aaron in the first reading, where even after having experienced the gifts of God in so many different ways, at the time when they were demanded to prepare themselves to receive the commandments, they resorted to letting their fear and self-indulgence take control. But still, the mercy of God is in full display, which is reiterated in all the readings today. The mercy which our Lord shows, as Bishop Barron would say, is extreme. But it also awakens and enkindles an extreme demand. The virtues are the means to awaken to this demand. But the question is, what are virtues? A virtue is a habitual or firm disposition to do the good. It allows the person not only to perform good acts, but rather to give the best of himself. The Church distinguishes between two general categories of virtues: the theological and moral or cardinal virtues. Faith, hope, and charity are called the theological virtues because they are the most important characteristics of Christian life. But unlike the theological virtues, which are the gifts of God through grace, the four cardinal virtues can be practiced by anyone. Thus, they represent the foundation of natural morality itself. Cardinal virtues are so called because they help us to live within the moral parameters set forth by the gospel. Chief among them are prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. In the book of Wisdom, chapter 8, verse 7, we read, "For wisdom teaches temperance and prudence, justice and fortitude. Nothing in life is more useful for men than these." Each week for the next 4 weeks, we'll try to understand how each of these virtues help us to stir into flame the gifts of God. Today, we'll try to understand the virtue of temperance and how temperance as a virtue helps us to respond to the extreme mercy and the extreme demands of the mercy of the Father. The virtue of temperance is also called the virtue of moderation. Temperance actually helps us to subdue our sensual appetites and make proper use of God's creatures. Here one approaches pleasures and the use of the created goods in the light of faith and of reason and of one's own vocation and the circumstance of life. Hence, temperance is not just about restraint, but response to an extraordinary, almost illogical, and seemingly foolish mercy of the Father. As we see in the Gospel, the Pharisees and the scribes were seemingly righteous and restrained in their acts. But this did not flow out of the experience of the mercy of God, but rather as considering themselves as slaves being forced to do so. This explains their opposition towards accepting the unconditional acceptance of the sinners by Jesus. In the parable of the prodigal son, actually, both sons are intemperate. The younger one, by fully giving in to the pleasures and luxuries that offer, which in turn leads him away from the Father. While the elder one, by not making temperance as an act of love, and therefore ends up by not being merciful. Because, as Lyon Moody would say, temperance is love in training. The intemperate person finds it difficult to understand the foolishness of a shepherd who is leaving 99 sheep to the danger of going astray and going in search of the lost one and rejoicing in it. He will find it difficult to understand the craziness of a woman who rejoices on something as invaluable as a small coin. They will find it difficult to understand the acceptance of a father who, instead of punishing his disobedient son, is feasting on his return. Jesus, as we see in the Gospel, is specifically addressing the parables to the Pharisees and the scribes to let them understand and experience the loving and merciful Father, so that they in turn may be so to the repentant. The question we are faced today as Christians is, what is the driving force for us in our virtuous and righteous life as Christians? Is our virtuous life, especially our temperate life, our response to the extreme demands of the extreme mercy we have experienced from the Father? If that is the case, we should be able to say, as St. Paul would say in his first letter to Timothy, chapter 1, verses 15 and 16, Jesus Christ came into the world to save sinners. Of these, I am the foremost. But for that reason, I was mercifully treated, so that in me, as the foremost, Jesus Christ may display all his patience as an example for those who would come to believe in him for everlasting life. I would like to end the homily with an incident that I read about. In a church, when service was going on, a young man entered the church. He had not been to the church for many years, and he was at this point of his life where he felt he needed to come back. But as he entered the church, he was trying to find a place to sit down, but every seat seemed to have been taken, and even those space that was available, it seems no one wanted to accommodate him. So in the end, he just came to the front and sat on the floor. And you can imagine how odd and how strange that would have looked. And you could imagine how the people would have stared at him. Then an old man, hardly able to walk, just got up, went up to him and sat along with him. The question I would like to ask and leave with you is, in whom do you think the young man would have seen, as St. Paul would say, on display the mercy and patience of Christ? In all the righteous churchgoers, or in the poor old man.